Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Entrepreneurship Is podcast. I'm your host, Kofi Anyemedu. Entrepreneurship is often portrayed as a straight climb to success, but anyone who has lived it knows it's nothing but linear. It's filled with uncertainty, bold decisions, missteps, lessons, and moments that test your resolve. Today on the Entrepreneurship Is podcast, I'm joined by Andrew Ackerman. He's an entrepreneur, a startup advisor, and author of the Entrepreneur's Odyssey. Andrew has spent years working closely with founders, helping them navigate the real journey of building companies from early ideas and hard setbacks to leadership, growth, and long-term vision. In this conversation, we go beyond theory to explore the highs, the lows, and the lessons that truly shape entrepreneurs. If you are building, leading, or simply finding your way through uncertainty, this episode is for you. Welcome to my show, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so Andrew, let's go back. What first drew you into entrepreneurship and working with startups?
Great question. So I may be a little older than some people in the audience. So like when I was done with business school, I looked around. There was none of this whole startup hustle. There wasn't this whole culture of startups. I remember in business school, I saw Netscape Navigator and thought this could be big if there's ever anything more than like government data, sources on this internet thing. So, that wasn't really an option when I came out. So I went into consulting. I did that for 4 years. And then in 1999, I'm on this project and we're actually creating this intranet solution so that these two companies can submit what their financials are and what they will be once they're merged without ever sharing that data directly with the other company, which would be kind of a problem for anyone who saw it if the merger didn't go through. And this was crazy times. Like you press compile and then you could go out and have dinner and come back an hour and a half later and wait for the results. But it was the first time I'm like, okay, this has moved beyond kind of just a thing. I go and I find my government data. This is actually something that has a lot of potential. So we wrapped up that project. The project was in London. I came back to the States, quit the consulting job, moved back to New York. And within 9 months, I'd kind of found my way into my first startup.
So we'll be picking a lot of nuggets from your experience so far. But let's still go back. So looking back, what defining moments shaped your entrepreneur and adversarial role as you have it today?
Also a good question. So remember, I had been 4 years as a consultant. And I didn't realize, how deeply that changed how I thought. So when you're a consultant, you're working for Fortune 100, Fortune 500, really big companies. And you're coming in there and you're trying to get them to take your advice, or you're trying to get them, prove to them that their gut is correct with data. So you're spending a lot of time nailing every single detail down. We had one project, it was actually the last project I worked on, where we came to the number, this is what we think the company is worth. You guys should buy it. And they had an investment bank working on it. They had a different number. In both cases, the numbers were were above what the company was actually trading for. So just go get it. But then well, wait, your number's here and their number's there. Can you guys figure out what the exact number is? And so we spent another 3 months, going back to the numbers. In that time, the stock price of the company they wanted to buy went up. So, they lost all this value because they needed to be precise like that. But that's how consultants work. That's how big companies work. So then, I'm in my first startup and we're out there and we're hustling. The sales guy is cutting these deals left, right, and center. Every time he has a customer, it's a different deal. Okay, you pay $8.95, you pay $8.99, you pay $9, right? And I'm like, Ed, man, why do we have a zillion different, we don't have that many customers. Why do we have that many pricing plans? Let's be rational about it, So it's really starting to get a point of friction. And then the CEO kind of pulled me aside into his office, you don't get it. Right now, we just need to say yes, right? We need the customers because we need to learn from them. We need the customers because we need the money, right? Being efficient doesn't matter if you don't have enough money to be efficient with. So we're just going to say yes. So put a pin in it for another year or two. And then when we're big enough that it matters, then we can start cleaning all this stuff up. And that's when I kind of got it, right? As a startup, quick and good enough trump the right answer, single quotes, every time. Get it good enough, you know what you need to do, then just do it, right? You don't need to overthink, you don't need to overanalyze it. And you can be a little sloppy the first couple of times around because you need to move fast.
So just as you know it, entrepreneurship is not a walk in the park. It has its ups and downs. So let's spend some time talking about your journey, talk about some of the wins and also the setbacks. So let's start with some wins. What are some of the most rewarding moments in your journey so far?
I'll give you a couple, right? I remember this like really, really vividly. It's a kind of early April, and like one of the guys that I'm working, turns out I was like, I think eCamp just went out of business. That was our main competitor in the summer camp space. And he's like, went out of business? That's like a toy store going out of business like in December 1st, right? This is the worst time for them to go out of business. They can just like make it through the summer, get some money back. It's like, no man, I think they're down. And like they were. So all of a sudden I'm like, this is awesome. Our number one competitor is dead. So the highs are high. Fast forward May, June, July, August, September, 5 months, right? So we had a term sheet from a VC fund that was interested in funding us. We'd gotten it before the summer. But this is a summer camp related business, so it's very seasonal. So the CEO made this decision. We're going to wait until the end of the summer. We're going to see where our revenue is. And then if our revenue is really good, we're going to go back to the VC. And then we're going to kind of negotiate a different valuation. Makes sense, right? One problem. On September 11th, 2001, we have a couple of planes that hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Our VC was headquartered in the World Trade Center. So our term sheet literally blew up on 9/11. I mean, thankfully, the guy that we were talking to, he's all right. As far as I know, he's still around. He survived, but the company ceased to exist. And that was like VC money that we kind of counted on. So then, low. And then we have this discussion about, well, we're not going to get any more money until next summer because seasonal business. How are we going to make it to next summer? And unfortunately, the answer was, well, we're not taking salaries. Highs and then lows. Highs are high and the lows are low.
So you've touched on the highs, you've mentioned also a low moment. Let's pick some lessons you've picked up so far. You've been on this journey for quite some time. You've interacted with a lot of business. Can you share some key lessons you've picked up so far on this journey with us?
Absolutely. There's a couple of them that are like, you must write this down on a piece of paper, tack it to the wall and always look at it. One of them is always find a way to test something cheaply and quickly before you do it, to de-risk it. Right, so if you think about it, like, you can model your entire business in an Excel spreadsheet. And if you do that right, you've got the assumptions that go into it. So like, let's say you're an e-commerce business. So, you know what you're going to sell, you want to sell the product for. Maybe the customers won't buy it. Maybe it has to be lower, it has to be higher. That's one assumption, right? Or you think how many people are going to come to you, right? But how does that happen, right? You take up Google Ads and you think what it's going to cost you there. You think what percentage of the people are actually going to click through the ad. You think what percentage of the people are going to put items in their cart. You think on average how many items and what the average cart size is going to be. All these things are assumptions. So you can just go and build it, but really what you want to do is test as much as you can test beforehand. So you could, for instance, before you built anything, just put up kind of a fake site in Squarespace or some website, WordPress, you name it, and then just put some ads on Google AdWords for $100, $200 and figure out what your click-through rate's going to be. What's it going to cost you to get a click? And if that's like way off, you got to rethink your model. But those are things you can do very cheaply before spending 6 months of your life building a site. And by the way, I learned that the hard way. We did that exactly wrong. So the example, and this is a true story, happened to me. So the first startup we had was called Bunk One. And like the core services were things like you send a kid to camp, they're not with you, but you want to see photos. And in 2000, it was kind of hard to get photos that you took on your digital camera. That's how long ago this was, up to the web. So we had a whole system for that. It was password protected. We charged for it. It was awesome. And then we thought to ourselves, parents buy a lot of stuff for their kids before they send them to camp. They buy clothing, they buy like a canteen or a water bottle, they buy a tent maybe, all that kind of stuff, sneakers, hats, bug spray. Let's create a store where they can buy all these things. We spent a lot of money building that store. And the store was like 4 different vendors. It was hard. This is early. This is like the early 2000s. And we opened up the store and we sold virtually nothing. So we're trying to figure out, why did we sell nothing? And then it occurred to us, the parents don't really think about camp, or at least not about the photos from camp until they've dropped their child off, right? They're doing all their stuff to get ready for camp. They drop the kid off. And then when they drop the kid off, they get the sheet of paper reminding them, here's how you do your account to see photos. So then they go and they sign up and they reactivate their account. Well, guess what? That's already weeks and weeks too late to buy anything for camp, right? Obvious in retrospect. but it costs us tens of thousands of dollars to learn that. Now, knowing what I know now, what I would recommend a startup do if they're kind of in a similar space is that say, hey, Kofi, don't build anything yet. For this year, just find a store that sells most of what you want. Negotiate an affiliate deal with them so you can get 4%, 8%, whatever it is that they sell. Just put that link on your site. Because the number one thing you're going to need right now is to know what percentage of the people actually click the link and enter the store. So for 2 minutes worth of coding, you put the link to the other guy's site and see how many clicks you get, what percentage of the people do it. And you'll get the data from them, on average, what do they purchase, that kind of stuff. And then you could decide if you want to build that store or not. And had we done that, we would have saved tens of thousands of dollars. So that's the kind of stuff that I tell all my startups to do. That's the kind of stuff I talk about in the book. But, that's it. What can I do quickly and cheaply to test an assumption before I spend a lot of time and money on it? That's the lesson.
Okay. So how has your leadership style, how has it evolved over the years?
It's a good question. It depends on what role I've been in, but I used to be very, take charge-ish, right? I'm in a group where people turn the seats around, let's talk, let's figure this out. And I still am in the right circumstances, but now that I've kind of made the transition from being a startup guy to an investor, it's all too easy as an investor to tell people what to do. But I want my founders to grow and be better. I'm not going to be there looking over their shoulder all the time. I can't be. So I've actually learned to be a little bit more teacher-like about it. What do you think? Why do you think that? Kind of leading them in until they can figure it out. I also teach entrepreneurship now. So kind of, the two of them reinforce each other rather than telling, I will, kind of question and try to lead them there. Sometimes also I've learned, instead of telling them what to do, I'll tell them a story that happened to another startup and they can kind of identify with it and that leads them to it. Because they oh, that's a startup, I'm a startup, same position, I totally get it. They went through it, I'm going through it right now. They tried that, I can try that. So I can tell them, hey, Kofi, you got to go put up that link and see what happens. Or I could tell them, hey, listen, this is my first startup. Here's what happened to us. And when I put it in the form of a story, you can bet your butt that more people actually do it. I tell them advice okay, that's interesting. Maybe I'll put that on the list of things to do. You tell them the story, they're like, yeah, we can do that. We should test that. Yeah.
So what belief about entrepreneurship did you have earlier on that has since changed and you've had to unlearn?
It's not glamorous. It's not glamorous. It's a lot of hard and boring work in some cases. So I thought it's awesome. It's going to be like the Facebook movies. This is even before the Facebook movie. I thought it was going to be awesome that way. I didn't realize that 95% of what you do because it has to get done and there's no one else to do it. You're using the top 5% or 10% of your skills only 5 or 10% of the time. But there's no one else to do it. When I had my first startup, we were so cheap, we built our own desks. And I don't mean we went to IKEA and assembled them. I mean, we got lumber and we paid the superintendent of the building cash under the table to hammer them together. Right? And we had splinters in our hands for the first couple of months. We didn't sand them down appropriately. But assembling desks. I quit a consulting job to physically make desks. But if I don't do it, someone just it's not going to get done. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of just stuff that's not glamorous, stuff that's not even mission critical. Except if it doesn't happen, you're going to die, right? So your startup's going to die. So you just have to do that. And I don't think anyone who hasn't done it doesn't get that. They think of it as, oh, it's all awesome stuff. You're making deals. The reality of how it feels is very different.
So a follow-up on this. So what is sustaining you on this journey so far?
You got to be a little insane to be a startup founder, right? You got to be okay with that. You got to excite. It's got to be yeah, I'll do it because this is my baby, right? I don't know if you have kids or not, but there's a lot with raising a kid that objectively kind of sucks, right? You're literally taking another animal, other species, right? But you got to change the diaper because that's your kid, yes. Right? And if you're their parent, you kind of love doing that too, even though objectively it's a crap job, unintended. Sorry about that. Didn't resist. Right? So there's a lot of that in the startup. So you really have to love what you're doing. You really have to be passionately involved with that, like a missionary going out there to convert the tribes. You got to be I believe in this and it has to happen. If you don't have that kind of mindset to it, if you're more kind of mercenary about it, this is kind of cool, I think I can make a lot of money, let's do that, it's going to feel very different to you.
So Andrew, tell me, so how do you make important decisions when information is unavailable, or where it's even available is incomplete? How do you make such decisions in such a situation?
You do the best you can. You're never going to have full and complete information. You try to get what you can. All right, so you try to get answers that are directionally correct. So I'll give you an example. It's actually a really great technique. I put it in the book. I call it the index card website or the index card app. So you want to build an app. No one's built it before. You can't ask people if they like it. They can't really visualize it. They don't know. Yeah, it seems like a good idea, Kofi. Why don't you do it? That's useless. So for about $5, you go buy yourself a pack of index cards, 4x6 index cards. Then you go to the bank and steal a pen, right? Because remember, we're startups, we're scrappy. Don't even buy the pen, just steal it from the bank. And then sketch on each card what each screen of your app or your website is going to be like. And then when you want to go out there and you want to talk to customers, and you should be talking to 20 or 30 customers, you say, so hey, Kofi, listen, I'm building this site. Thank you for sitting down with me. I'm building this site or this app. Before I do that, I want to do a little bit of research. I want to be like smart and lean about this. So I've mocked up images of the app on these index cards. I want you to pretend this is your phone and those are actual screens. Look at it, touch it, click the button, swipe, whatever you would do with it. Don't ask me questions because I'm not there when you download the app. I want you to pretend you've just downloaded the app. And the only thing I want you to do a little differently is just whatever you're thinking, say it out loud, because I can't read your mind. But I want to just be like a fly on the wall. I want to stand here and watch what happens when you download my app. And you give it to them. You give them the first card. They touch it, they swipe it, give them whatever second screen corresponds to what they just did. And if you do that, you will learn a lot, right? You do that 20 or 30 people, and you find that they all get confused in the same place. Well, the design there is not so good. Or they never use whole sections of the site. Well, guess what? Maybe the design was bad, they didn't understand it. Maybe they just don't really care about those features. So guess what? You don't have to build them, right? And you can do this for all different sides. You can, once you're done, you can start saying, okay, let's break character, Kofi. I want to ask you, why didn't you do this? And your customer might say, yeah, I kind of wanted to do that, but I was really afraid of what you were going to do with my data. Or I didn't know what that button was going to do. I thought it was going to charge me. So you learn so much about it, all for the cost of a pack of index cards, 20 or 30 minutes it takes you to sketch out your site, and then just go and talk to people. On the other hand, go ahead. You want to spend 6 months coding that? Release it to the world and find out that half the people don't like half the site and the other half of the people are confused with the design. Which way do you want to do it? You want to do the smart way, the quick way, the fast way. It's kind of part and parcel of the idea I gave before. Like, how do I test this cheaply and quickly? It's part of a mindset.
So you work with a lot of founders and teams. And from your experience, what really separates founders who endure from those who burn out?
Yeah. So there's two characteristics that I like, or three characteristics actually, that I like to cite as the key things they need to do for success. And when it comes to burnout, the one of them that's most important is to think in terms of sprints. All right, so we think about that for programming sprints, but I want you to think of it even while you manage as sprints, because it's a long journey. The startup journey is 8-9 years, maybe more. And for large parts of it, it's kind of a lonely journey. You're under-resourced, right? You haven't raised money. You've raised money, but there's never enough money. So if you're constantly trying to grind it out, it's going to grind you down. So you got to think, okay, I'm going to do this. It's going to be a day. I'll be up till 3 a.m., but then I'm taking the morning off. All right, so I give an example. Like when you go out to fundraise, there's a couple of steps to it. So number one, you want to find a list of investors that are likely, or I should say, they have invested in the kinds of things that make you think that they'd be interested in your startup. Right, so it takes a lot of work. They're going out there, looking up investors, looking at what they invested in, finding out who else invested in those startups. It's a couple hours of mind-numbingly, my eyes glaze over, boring work. So I tell people, go do it. You want to do it in 4 hours, you want to move fast, but go do it. And when you're done with it, go out, go for a run, go get a drink, go watch a movie, whatever it is you need to recharge. But take that time and then come back the next day, because step 2 is also tedious and mind-numbingly boring. But do that. So in the space of 2 or 3 days, you can get it done. But again, sprints, sprint, recover, sprint, recover. So that's the one of the 2 or 3 characteristics that usually I see in startups. And if I don't see them, there's a chance they'll burn out.
Okay. All right. So let's spend some time also talking about your book. Can you briefly tell us about your book?
Sure. Okay. So I happen to have a copy here. Shocking, right? So it's
Good.
called The Entrepreneur's Odyssey. And there's a lot of like visual puns, by the way. If you see this, here's the founder and he's in front of the maze, which is great. And he's got a chainsaw because he's hacking his way through the maze. That's the startup. But let's talk about like what the book is and like why I chose to do it. There are no shortage of books out there that will tell you how should you build a startup. Some of them are good, most of them not so much, but they all share this one crazy characteristic. They're mind-numbingly boring. Like building a startup, being an entrepreneur, like that's fun, right? If you're the right kind of person, that's like super interesting stuff. So why are these books so painfully boring? And business books in general, painfully boring. And they're hard to remember. Like most of these books are a couple of big ideas and then like they're in one ear out the other. So what I did is I took the lessons that I learned over the years of giving advice in the form of stories. And I decided to tell the story of a fictional startup from pitching the idea in an evening event all the way through until that startup, that founder gets its first round of financing for the startup. And along the way, everything that character goes through and that startup goes through is an opportunity for me to tell the story and give the advice as part of the story, right? The index card app we talked about is part of the story. When he's trying to think about what revenue model he wants for his startup, it's actually a conversation between him and his son on the New York City subway, where his son's like, hey, if I had the subway, I'd be rich. Why? Well, I charge so much money for it. And then he's like, well, son, you know, the same $3 that it takes to get from like here to 5 stops to your school, we could go all the way out to like the furthest part of Brooklyn. And his son's like, no, that's crazy. You should pay for how far you go. That's pay per use versus, buy, like a all you can eat buffet. And then they start talking about freemium models. And then they start talking about share of savings models, right? But it's all embedded within the story of the founder and his son, on their way to school. So unlike the typical how-to guide, which is like anecdote, 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 name drop, name drop, name drop, 5 bullets at the end of the paragraph, and then like your eyes start to like droop because it's dull. This is a story. It keeps you entertained, and it, along the way, teaches you these lessons in ways that you can actually remember.
So you describe entrepreneurship as an odyssey rather than a straight path. Why is that mindset so important for founders?
So I have a confession to make. I actually didn't think about it that deeply when I came up with the name of the book. I knew I wanted so actually the first version of the book was The Art of the Start, but it turns out that Guy Kawasaki, a guy in the startup world who I respect the hell out of, already has named his book that, so I can't take that. Then I was going to name the book Don't Make Me Think, because that's what a lot of investors say. Like a lot of startup founders like overcomplicate things. So like, don't make me think, right? Pretend I'm grandma, right? Talk to me like that. And I proposed that to my publisher. And I says, this is a book about startups. It's about founders, about entrepreneurs. You probably should use one of those words in the title. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So ultimately I came up with The Entrepreneur's Odyssey. I kind of liked the way it sounded. But then people have come back to me and they said, it's really a great analogy because like the Odyssey, like Odysseus coming home from like the Trojan War, like it was anything but a linear path. Like he was blown off course, he was kidnapped by Circe, he had to like go through between the Sirens and the Scylla and Charybdis. Like he went a lot of different directions before he finally made it home. And they're like, that's what the startup journey is like. So then I would say, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. But it really wasn't. But it is true, right? It is actually very true when you think about it. Your startup journey will be anything but a straight line. You're going to you'll have your opinion. I think this is going to go. You'll hit a wall. When you hit a wall, you have a couple of choices. Do I go right or left to try to go around it? Do I try to go over it? Do I try to go through it? Do I try to tunnel under it? Right? But you will hit a wall and you'll have to change direction. And you'll have to do that purposefully. You'll have to do that intelligently. And with luck, you'll find your way through the maze.
So in the book, you also emphasize deeply understanding customer pain. Why do so many founders still struggle to get this right?
Okay, so this actually gets to my second big characteristic. So let's roll it back and I'll tell you exactly how the characteristic fits in. So there are actually 3 elements to pain. I call them the 3 dimensions of pain. One is the intensity. Like how painful is it? Like, oh, I got a hangnail that kind of stings a little bit, or bang, I just hit my thumb on with a hammer. So that's number 1. And that's what most people think in terms of pain. There's actually 2 other dimensions. Number 2 is how frequent is it? Like every single time I use the hammer, I hit my thumb. And, I do a lot of work around the house versus, Applying to university is very painful, but with luck that you do that once in your life. So frequency is important too. And the third one is how widespread is it? How prevalent is it? Right? Man, it's super painful. It happens all the time. Yeah, dude, but it only happens to you. But there's not a lot of other people in the same position. Like your company does it a weird way, or you're an odd duck. Everyone else, we don't care about this. So to have a truly painful problem that's worth solving from business perspective, it needs to be intense, it needs to be prevalent, and it needs to be frequent. Now, the reason a lot of entrepreneurs don't get that is sometimes they just assume that, hey, I feel it, it's going to be like that for everybody. And partly, sometimes it's because they haven't developed, either they haven't spoken to a bunch of people, and that doesn't matter because if they haven't spoken to anyone else, they don't have any other data points. So get out of the house, talk to customers, make the index card app, right? Get their feedback, ask them, how often is this a problem for you? How big a deal is it? Is it it's a minor inconvenience, or, oh my God, you just, whatever, I need something, right? If you have a really painful problem and you show someone your index card site, they're going to lean in and say, when is this done? When can I have this? I'm dude, it's just index cards. I haven't started coding yet. It's yeah, but when are you going to be done? That's a signal that you've got something that's really painful for somebody. Some entrepreneurs will miss those signals. They'll talk to people and they're not into it, but they're so in their head that they don't notice it. And what I call that is a failure of empathy, right? So empathy, we usually think of something bad happens to a friend or just anybody. And sympathy is I can only imagine how horrible that was. But empathy is, oh man, I've been there. I feel exactly what you're feeling right now. I know it, right, at a gut level. And a great founder has cultivated empathy. So what that means in a customer setting is you can get in the mind of your customer and understand how he or she feels. Right? I am selling this to real estate agents. Well, I'm going to become, in my mind, a real estate agent for a moment. And I'm going to understand what pisses me off. I'm going to understand what makes me happy. I'm going to understand what keeps me from making a sale. It's almost like method acting in a way. And the same thing when you're raising money. I'm going to understand what that dude in the sleeveless vest on the other side of the table that I'm trying to raise money from, I got to understand what's moving him, right? What's he looking for? What's she looking for? So that ability to empathize with the other party, to put yourself in their shoes as a founder, is going to be invaluable in terms of creating stuff that really solves painful problems in a way that your customer or the investor will appreciate. And ultimately, in the case of the customer, will buy. In the case of the investor, will fund.
Also, in the book, you talked about pitching, and in pitching, you stress the power of narrative. Mm-hmm. What makes a startup story truly resonate with investors?
Sure. So there's a couple of different pitches along the way you should think about. And the analogy I sometimes use is the sales funnel, right? So we all know in a sales funnel, when you're pitching someone, you have a bunch of leads at the top, and you lose a little each way down the funnel. Some people aren't really in your market. Other people kind of do feel that pain. They're in your market, but they don't have money for it. Other people do have the money and they feel the market, but they're not the decision maker, right? And so, narrow and narrower down. So when you're raising money, it's kind of a similar idea, right? You have a whole bunch of prospective investors. You start with ideally over 100 investors who could conceivably be interested in your startup. And your first meeting usually is like an elevator pitch, 20 to 30 seconds. Not everything about your startup. You can't do that in 20 or 30 seconds, but a super tight, here's what I'm doing, here's the problem I'm solving, for this market, and it's huge, and here's the traction I have, right? I'm doing this much money in revenue. I've got these pilot customers, right? And if you don't tell me you have traction, I'm going to assume you have none, right? And then you ask, so I'm raising $1 million to get to $2 million in revenue within the next 18 months. So that elevator pitch at the top of the funnel is to take that 100 plus startups and qualify them. So Kofi, are you interested in that? Is that right? Well, I don't do real estate technology, so it's not for me. Okay, they're out, right? But really what you're trying to get to is them to say, well, that's really interesting. I got a couple of questions, right? So you're getting them, they start to think about it. So that gets you to the 3-minute conversation where they're that's interesting enough, but I want to make sure that it's worth calling this person into my office or into a Zoom for a 30-minute, meeting. Once you get past that, then you go into the office and you'll present your pitch deck. And it's 20 plus or minus slides, and it covers all the stuff that an investor, remember, empathize with the investor, that the investor needs to know before he's not going to write a check. That comes later, but he's going to commit many hours of his time to dig deeper. So that deck becomes your next pitch. And I'd give like an hour and a half seminar on what should go in it. And then beyond that, there's the entire like conversation and managing the process and hopefully playing different investors off each other when you finally get to the point where you have term sheets until finally at the bottom of the funnel, the money you're raising comes out and hits your bank account.
So, Andrew, what's one hard truth about fundraising? What's one hard truth about fundraising that founders aren't told early enough?
Okay. So number one, there's no fun in fundraising. You can get good at it and you can get kind of a sort of satisfaction with doing something hard well, but it is brutal. A lot of people telling you no, like 20, 30, 40 people tell you no in a given day, maybe, right? So it's not a happy process. So just thick skin, doesn't matter, just it's not a fit, that's okay. It's not that your startup sucks, maybe it does, but not necessarily. It could just be not what the investor's looking for. So just, you're gonna get a lot of rejection. Sometimes that rejection has nothing to do with you, it's just not a fit. It's like, she's attractive, he's attractive, but they just don't get along. And like, they'll make two other people very happy. Sometimes there's something wrong with how you're presenting your startup or what your startup's doing, and you need to get that feedback and get better at it. But, it's a process. It takes a lot of time, and there are no shortcuts, which leads me to the other piece of advice, the most common mistake founders make when raising money. Cold email to investors. Don't do it. So I'll give you an analogy. Let's say you have a software business and you're selling a software package to large companies, and you're asking them for $10,000, $50,000 a year, $150,000 for that piece of software. So what do? Right? You research the heck out of that company. I want to know everything that company needs. If I can, I want to know what software they're already using. Then I want to go out there and figure out who at that company is the decider for this. And then I want to know everything about that person. Like, where do they come from before? What are they passionate about? What makes them get promoted or get a bonus? And then when I reach out to them, ideally I get a warm intro, because that's the best way to get in front of them. And if I have to email them, and even if I got a warm intro and like I'm asking someone else to forward it, I'll spend 30 or 40 minutes just crafting the perfect email where in the very first sentence it jumps out at that person that, yes, I get them. It's like, Kofi, you open up the email and you're like, man, this guy gets me. That's exactly what I'm struggling with. So that's what you do for enterprise sales for $50,000. How come when you're asking me for $500,000 or $5 million, 100 times as much, I get a bullshit Dear Investor generic email, right? It doesn't work, won't work. The best thing I can say about it is if you've done it, don't worry, the investor didn't even read it. He won't know you did it. So don't bother wasting your time with that. Go learn how to get warm introductions. Go learn how to network to the startup. That's the way to do it.
So we're just about wrapping up. But before we sign off, what pieces of advice would you leave for my listeners?
You know the number one piece of advice, right? If you're thinking about starting a startup or you have a startup already and you want to make it successful, stop and buy the book. Everything that we've done, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not joking, right? Because this is 20 years of investing boiled down into, 230 pages? 220 pages. 220 pages. It's fun, it's funny, and every page is actionable. You'll go through it, I guarantee you, and you'd be like, okay, I was doing that wrong. Or, oh man, that's a great idea. I want to do that. More than anything, I mean, short of like getting me to come down and sit with you and doing it personally, I can't think of anything that in, the couple of hours it'll take you to read it can make it that much better, can make your startup that much more likely to succeed. Or if you don't have a startup yet, help you think about, is this right for me? Right? Because the beauty of it, it's a story. You actually understand what it feels like to do a startup. And maybe it's not for you. And you know what? Stay in your day job. That's the best answer. No shame in that. But you can learn that in the book over a couple hours of reading instead of quitting your day job, spending months and a lot of money, and then realizing it's not for you. Okay, so it's a little self-serving, but that's my one piece of advice.
Okay. Before I sign off finally, what last words would you like to leave to my audience?
Well, way back, I said there are 3 types of characteristics that founders have that you should learn or cultivate. We talked about 2 of them, right? We talked about empathy. We talked about what can I test for free or for $1 quickly. The last one is you should strive to have well-reasoned but loosely held opinions. So what I mean by that is this, Kofi. you're going to get a lot of advice for your startup, whether you want it or not. The moment you go out there, people say, you should do this, you should do that, right? There's two different types of mistakes you can make if you're not careful. Number one is like, oh my God, that's a great idea, I'm going to do it. And then you spin around like a weather vane. Whichever way the wind was blowing, you spin and you face that way. Whoever talked to you last. And like, you can't get anything done if you're zigzagging like that all the time. The other mistake you can make is, no, I know how it's done best, I'm going to do it this way, right? And you never alter course. So you're looking for, when I say you have well-reasoned opinions, if someone says, oh, you should try this, you should be able to say to them, okay, Andrew, that's really interesting. Like, I was going to do this other thing, and here's why. Explain to me, please, what your thinking is behind it. Like, why is that not the right way to go? Why should I do this instead? And then if the person comes back with you and says, well, okay, it's really interesting, you should suggest that, but here's some data you didn't know about. Or, I've worked with 40 companies, 50 companies, 70 companies, 700 companies. And when they do this, it fails. When they do that, it's more likely to succeed. But you get their reasoning behind it. Right? And if they don't show you their work, if they don't give you compelling reasons, you stay the course because you had a good reason for doing what you're doing. But if they do give you a good reason, seriously consider it. You may still not change your course, or you may decide, hey, I now have 2 courses. Let's find a quick way to experiment and see which one's the way to go. But be prepared to move when it's appropriate to move. So that's what I say, loosely held but well-reasoned opinions.
All right. So Andrew, thank you very much for sharing not just frameworks and insights with us today, but also the lived realities of entrepreneurs, the wins, the setbacks, and the wisdom earned along the way. For our listeners, entrepreneurship is not just a straight path. It's a journey that demands clarity, resilience, and the courage to keep going even when the road isn't clear. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, share this episode with others, and join us again for some real stories and practical lessons on the Entrepreneur Speaks podcast, where entrepreneurs share their journeys unfiltered. Until I come your way next time, let's continue to keep hope alive. Cheers.